Okay, so let's start working through the 3D curves exercise where we make this handle. So the first thing that we will do is we're gonna open this. There's a link in here that you'll open to get your a document you can copy that has these photos in it that we're going to use. So we'll click here and then make a copy. Next, we're going to make a part studio because this file didn't come with a part studio. So we're going to create a part studio and name it handle. Next, we are going to create a sketch on the front plane, and we're going to do insert an image and use the front profile that they provide for us here. So front plane, make a sketch. And we are going to insert the image of our front profile. So insert image, front profile, and then drag a rectangle to place it in our sketch. Then we're going to put some dimensions on it. The height is 5 inches. The left side is 5 inches horizontally away from the origin. And the bottom of the rectangle is 0.125 below the origin. So the side dimension here is 5 inches. Dimension from the origin over to the left side is 5 inches. And then the height, the origin is 0.125 inches above the bottom of the rectangle. So now our this image is all locked in place now. The sketch is defined. Accept the sketch. I'm going to name it front view image. So I know this sketch just has the picture in it. Next, we're going to do the same process to make a sketch with the right view image. So we're going to go onto the right plane, sketch. We're going to insert the right profile. Drag a rectangle so it shows up. Then we are going to put these dimensions on it. The height is 5. Distance from left side to the origin is 5.125. So our height is 5. Distance from the origin to the left side is 5.125. And then it says the bottom line of the sketch image is going to be coincident to the bottom of the first sketch image on the front plane. So we want this, so I'm going to get out of my dimension tool. I want the bottom of this rectangle and the bottom of that rectangle to be coincident. So I'm going to select both of them and hit the coincident constraint. Some of the entities could not be used. Why not? Maybe just this point right here. There we go. And we'll accept the sketch, and I'm going to name it right view image. So this is the names that they pick, handle right and handle front. I like mine better. Okay, so now we are going to create a handle spline to define the height and overall shape of the handle. We're going to make a new sketch on the right plane and do a 2-point spline where the bottom point is coincident to the origin. So right plane, new sketch. I'll just go ahead and hide these for a second. And we're going to do a 2-point spline. The first point is coincident to the origin. So we'll hit escape to make it a 2-point spline. The height, so we're going to dimension between the endpoints. The vertical dimension is 4.525 and the horizontal dimension is 0.4. So just click on the two endpoints, and then if you move to the side far enough, it'll give you the vertical measurement, 4.525. If you go straight down, it'll give you the horizontal measurement, 0.4. Something like that. Now it says to sketch construction lines on the spline handles, but we don't need to. We can dimension them without that. But we want to put these dimensions on them. And so we're dimensioning from between the endpoints of our spline handles. So let's see. So from between these 2 points, the vertical distance is 1.275. Horizontal distance was 0.5. Then for the bottom, the vertical distance is 1.725. And the horizontal distance, 0.23. So now this curve is all defined. And they want to name it handle spline 2D A. So this is a 2-dimensional sketch for the hand. So I'm going to put the 2D first. when I name it, just so I remember that's one of my 2D sketches, and I'm just going to call it 2D handle A. 2D handle A. Actually, I'm just going to call it 2D spline. We know it's part of the handle. (2D spline A). So that the spline that we just made is going down the center of basically both sketches, kind of, but really the right side sketch. And then it's also centered down the front sketch too. So now we're going to use the last sketch. We're going to use the endpoints and the spline itself to create planes where we're going to have an oval for the top and an oval for the bottom. So we're going to do a curve point plane, which gives you a plane through the point you select, but perpendicular to whatever curve you select. So one way to do it is to, let's see, I'm going to hide these again. So this is the top of the curve, this is the bottom of the curve. So if we select the top point and the curve, when we hit the plane button, it'll automatically have pre-selected the setting of curve point. See how it's curve point here, and then it just goes, okay, this is where you want the plane. So that plane is at like the top, and it's perpendicular to the end of this curve. And I think they want us to name it top profile sketch plane. Profile. I'm going to call it top profile plane. Then we're going to do the same thing, but with the bottom. We'll call that bottom profile plane. So we'll select the bottom point and the curve, and then the plane button. It's automatically at curve point, and we will name it bottom profile. So then we're going to make the top of the handle is an ellipse and the bottom of the handle is an ellipse. So we're going to then, our next steps will be to sketch ellipses on those profiles. So yep, in the top profile plane, we're going to sketch an ellipse that has a vertical long axis with these dimensions, 1.625 for the height, 0.875 for the width. So select the top profile, sketch, normal, and the center point of the ellipse is supposed to be coincident to the top point of the spline we made. So the top point of the spline is this guy right here. So when I get my ellipse tool, I want to start right here with my center on that point. And then I just want to make sure that I'm vertical. So you want to get this vertical constraint locked in right here. And then the height was 1.6 something, 625. And then the width was 0.875. We'll name this top ellipse and accept the sketch. So now we're going to make the bottom profile ellipse. So this one, it's going to be coincident to the bottom end point, same width, but the height of it is 1.125. So on the bottom profile plane, make a sketch. And then we're going to make an ellipse. Center on the origin there. And it was 1.125 for the height and 0.875 for the width. Yep. Then we will name this sketch bottom ellipse. All right, so now we're going to create a new sketch on the right plane and name it right side guides. So right plane, a sketch. And we need to show the right image view. We're going to rename it right side guides. And then we're going to use the spline tool to trace one side of the handle. Be careful when you place this point down here. You don't want it to have any relationships automatically put in place with that origin or anything. I'm going to zoom in, and when I place this point, make sure it doesn't do anything weird like that. Then I'll hit escape. All right, so then next we are going to, we need to do a pierce constraint between the top end point of our spline and the top ellipse, and then also between the bottom end point and the bottom ellipse. Okay, so in order to see that a little better, I'm going to hide the picture that we're using, and it kind of looks like my endpoint is on there. It looks pretty close, but if you zoom in, you can see it's really not hooked on there. So what I need to do is select that endpoint and this curve, and then use the pierce constraint. Then we'll do the same thing for the bottom. So now we can see that both points are actually on those ellipses. So what's next? We're gonna not add construction lines, but we're gonna do these angles on the handles. The angle from the top view, from the top horizontal is 50, and the bottom, the angle from horizontal is 25. Okay, so I'm gonna need to show that image, so I have this horizontal line to measure my angle with. So dimension tool, spline handle, and then the horizontal construction line, and our angle is 50 degrees. And then for the bottom one, it doesn't want to give me the spline handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of my dimension tool, drag this over a little bit, then get my dimension tool back, select that handle and the horizontal construction line, and that angle is supposed to be 25 degrees. Okay. In the same sketch, create another spline for the other side of the grip. So we're going to basically run through the same process for the other side. But first I want to try to clean up mine a little bit. I can adjust my points here to hopefully I might need, I'll just kind of leave it like that. I'll just get it kind of, try to get them like in the gray. That looks pretty good. So then we're going to do a similar process that we're going to work through for the spline on the left side over here. So I'm going to get me spline tool. Accidentally made 2 points really close to each other here, so I'm going to delete one of them. Then I'm going to hide the image real quick so that I can do pierce constraints on these, the endpoints and the ellipse. Now I will show the image again so that I can adjust my spline points and try to get them as close as possible to the image. I might need to add a spline point there maybe. Oops, I did the wrong thing. That was just adding a point. This one won't act as a spline point, so I need to delete it. I need to get the spline point tool. All right, so now let's see if I can get this a little bit closer. I think I might need to add another spline point in here. And I'm gonna go ahead and add another spline point right over here so I can match that part a little better. That looks pretty good. So then the angles here are spline handle at the top should be vertical. Our spline handle at the bottom should match the 25-degree angle of the other one. So let me zoom in, zoom. I need to make this guy vertical. And then it's like, no, it's freaking out. So I'm going to Control Z. And instead of just trying to tell it to be vertical, let me hide the image real quick. I'm going to move it a little bit closer to vertical and then try to tell it to be vertical, see if it understands now. So now it gets it. So maybe the other way, it was trying to go vertical, but like up here, and the spline couldn't do that. Okay, so anyway, that one is vertical. The one down here needs to be 25 degrees from horizontal. So I need to show that sketch so I can get my horizontal line here. "25 degrees. And then I want to double check and make sure that my spline points and everything still look good. That looks cool. So then we'll go ahead and accept that sketch. And if I hide the image, our curves look pretty similar. The only difference is they show the construction lines for the spline handles, and we didn't do those, so they just won't show. Okie dokie. So now we are going to take a front view, make a sketch on the front plane, and we're going to name it 2D spline B. So we're going to show the front profile sketch and then sketch a spline along one edge. They do 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Let's see how many we need. So front view, we're going to show the front view image. We're going to make a sketch on the front plane. And then we are going to make a spline that we try to match one side. And then again, down here, when you're putting this bottom point, you want to be careful you don't get any automatic constraints that we don't want. So we're just going to place it where we don't get a yellow line popping up. Then I'll hit escape. And I'm not going to try to get it all matched up perfect yet. Let's see what other like dimensions or anything they might want us to do here. So at the bottom, we're going to do a pierce constraint between the bottom endpoint of the spline and the bottom ellipse. So the bottom endpoint and the ellipse, and then a pierce. And then the top is going to be a little different because if we pierce, it's going to be back here. See, if I was to do a pierce between these two, it would hook on back here, but we want it to hook on up here in the middle. So we have to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to undo my pierce so that it's not right there. So here, let's find the instructions then for this part. So show the top ellipse. All right, it's showing, but let's go ahead and hide the image. We're going to project the center point of the ellipse onto our sketch with the use tool. So here is the use tool. And so when we click on the center point of this sketch, it'll basically project a point onto our sketch plane where that point would match up. So if we try to look at where that is, it is right there. Our sketch is like right here on the front plane. So this, like the blue line right here, is the front plane. That this point right here gets projected onto our sketch right there. So there's the center point. This is where that center point would hit on our sketch plane. And so we need it to be at that height, right? So then what's next? Add a horizontal constraint between the top end point of the spline and the projected point. So a horizontal constraint. So between this projected point we just made and the end point here, we're going to do a horizontal constraint. So that this point is now the same height as in the middle. And then what we're going to do next is, I think, then we're going to add a coincident constraint between the top end point of the spline and the top ellipse. So then the top ellipse here, and then this end point, we're going to do a coincident constraint. So it's at the same height. Our curve is at the same height as the center point here. So now we're going to accept that sketch. Name it something. Yeah, I think we're supposed to name that one 2D spline B. Okay, so that is the right side of our handle. Oh wait, no. What's the one that I was supposed to name? This one I'm supposed to name. No, I need to do a projected curve next. Okay, yeah, that one was spline 2D. Okay. So next we are going to do the projected curve, where between those two sketches. So I'm going to hide the other stuff right now. Okay. So I'm going to hide my right side guides real quick too. So we're just looking at these two curves. Okay. So we're going to do a projected curve, and we're going to do the 2D splines as the two curves to project. So basically what's going to happen, okay, so let's kind of just watch what happens. We're going to do that tool is located in the drop down under the little spring here, the helix. Projected curve. So the first, we need to pick these two sketches basically. So that one, the second sketch is that one. And then it projects the curve where they will meet, right? So this curve gets projected towards the front, and this curve gets projected towards the side, and where they intersect is this one right here. So I'm going to, this is projected curve 1, and we want to name it projected curve right. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to change this to right. And so you notice that when it made that projected curve, it hid the other two curves we used to make it, and now we have the 3D curve down here. So I'm going to rename it down here. Instead of curve 1, it's projected curve right. I'm going to rename it here too. Okay. Next, we are going to do the mirror feature. We're going to mirror that projected curve we just did, where the right plane is the mirror, and we're going to call the new curve projected curve left. So mirror tool is here. I already had my projected curve right selected. So it already put it in my blue box here for entities to mirror. In my mirror plane, I want to select the right plane. And then you can see it mirrors that curve to the other side. So I'm going to accept it. And then I'm going to rename the curve projected curve left. So now we have the side curve that's touching the, it's now touching the ellipses in the right places where we want them to. Okay, so what's next? Next, we are going to show the top ellipse, bottom ellipse, and all the guide curves that we want to use. So we already have the top and bottom ellipse showing, and I need my right side guides to show. And then we're going to, in order to create the solid part, we are going to do a loft. So we loft tool here, solid and new. The profiles that we're going to loft between are going to be the top ellipse and the bottom ellipse. And you'll notice that it starts to get confused right away. It's like, how do I go from this top ellipse to this bottom ellipse? It doesn't know yet. What we need to do is give it guides and continuity. So we're going to check this box. And then in the for guides, we're going to select the guide curves. And so notice each one we click, it adjusts a little bit, right? So when I click on one of these side ones, it'll kind of pop out to fit there. When I select the front one, it'll jump out to fit there. And then when I select the other side curve, it'll pop out and fit there. So those guide curves basically told the program how to make the solid shape in between those two ellipses. So we're going to accept it and name the part handle. Rename. And that is the end of doing that. So let me go ahead and stop this recording.